is crazy. Personnel is crazy.
Mine, you guys are actually just double checking and make sure that we got everything.
I don't get it. It's a lot.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Moving on. Sadly, it's-
The church was not great. Interesting. Does that matter? The picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh, I don't care. It doesn't have to be on there.
Where's Megan Johnson? Is she a teacher?
I'd seen your name. I don't know who it is. Almost. I'm just making a bigger patch.
Good. All right, call the meeting to order. Everyone stand please for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flags to your left.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Need a motion to approve minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, this is the public forum portion of our meeting. Public forum is a specific time set aside at the beginning of each meeting for public communication to the board. At this time, anyone that wants to speak is may present comments, suggestions, concerns. At the board president's discretion, the public forum is limited to 5 minutes per person. Iowa law prohibits us from discussing a specific employer's performance at a public meeting. So at this time, if there's anyone that would like to speak, guessing there very well might be, who would like to go first?
The question, point of clarification, it's already on the agenda. It's not something that's open to public forum. It's already on the agenda, something to speak to.
Nope, you can speak to it now, yes,
But if it's on the agenda, you don't have an open discuss when you're discussing.
just now, yeah.
That would clarify.
In order to speak during something on the agenda, you'd have to have notified us prior to the meeting to speak at that point. So anyone that wants to speak on anything that's on the agenda, please speak now.
I can speak. I'll
Perfect.
start out. I want to obviously bring up to the attention something that's on the agenda, the 8th grade health textbook purchase. I just appreciate the fact that the board and school is bringing that up. The public, I think it's good to air that out in public. I know there's some undertow in the community about the book, the previous book that was being used, and it was inappropriate, age inappropriate. In doing so, I know it's on there for, looks like for information discussion item tonight, doesn't look like there's action on it. A question or suggestion, I guess I would ask is that when you do speak to that book, is that you divulge that to the public so we have a chance to review that and potentially come back and provide any comment or feedback the community has. I think that is important. Something else is I would encourage, and I would like to see, and I think the platform's already there, and then not just necessarily for the health education course, but for all the courses. If you have a platform, a great platform, CSD website, is that the school put the syllabus and curriculum for all the courses that the school teaches there. Greater transparency, so parents are involved in their kids' education. They know what's being taught to their kids. They know what textbooks are being used in those individual classes. Like I said, the platform is there. The syllabus is already created each year. The lesson plans are created, so we know the topics as parents, what's being taught to our kids in those lesson plans, and we have a better able to more input at that point. If there's a question or comment that comes up, it's out there, it's very public, very transparent, and we have a chance to provide feedback as a community to the school board. So those are my comments and suggestions. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm hoping tonight will be the start of clarity and healing among the community where there is definitely some confusion and there's hurting. Tonight, you guys will be discussing an 8th grade textbook. Just a few years back, and the textbook was approved for higher education that was used in our 8th grade classes. It was a graphic book designed for students in their later years, so college education textbook. Somehow, this book that you can't find on the publisher's website for ages K through 12, you can only find it when you click higher education. Somehow, this book ended up in the hands of our 8th graders. This book was so bad that right after it was purchased, before getting to the hands of the students, or at least that's what was explained to me, had chapters cut out of it. I believe, and I hope I'm not saying this incorrectly, that the chapters that were cut out of this book were on the topics of bondage. If I'm misspoken, if I'm misspeaking, I'm sorry, and we can correct that later. Yet this book still had graphic images of erect penises, woman's vagina, and the use of a vibrator. I overheard some people talking recently about how the school was buying some new books because parent were complaining. I was left thinking, well, that's one way of saying it. They're buying new books because parents complained. That's not true. It's partially true. A better way of saying it was that the book was not age appropriate for the people who were using it. They didn't know me, and I didn't know them. They didn't know that I complained, and I didn't share with them that I did complain. They didn't know that my daughter or our children this year were given a textbook that were for people who were 5 to 7 years of age older than they currently are. They didn't know that our students were asked not to talk about this outside of class, and there's discussion around that as well. They didn't know that since this book had been being used, that the school leadership stopped sending home permission slips to be signed. They didn't know that the school leadership didn't send out emails letting people know about what's being taught in this class to the parents. They didn't know that our kids were shown a TED Talk that leads students to seek out peer counseling or their peers' thoughts when their parents disagreed with their lifestyle or lifestyle choices. They didn't know that in class, students had to stand up when the word porn was written on the chalkboard and pick a side of the room that was designated. One side was for want, one side was for need. So if porn is a want, you go to this side. If porn was a need, you go to that side. They didn't know that our students had an STI assignment where they were encouraged to include gross pictures that they would find online. They didn't know that our students were taught or asked to look up what a blue waffle was. They didn't know that my daughter had to participate in discussion with others about her sexuality when she was planning to have sex, and so on. My daughter was 13. They didn't know that our students took a psychological exam to gauge their level of sexual desire. It's called a walk in the woods. And they didn't know that they had to take a personality test that would tell our 13-year-olds what type of romantic relationships they will have. I didn't fill them in. I just hoped at some point our school would. I'm glad you're looking for a new book. I'm thrilled. I hope to somehow in the near future put this last year behind me. The anger, the frustration, the hurt, and a hope for healing through transparency. I hope that we can learn from our mistakes, fix the curriculum, and I hope that our parents can be communicated with in a better way.
else like to speak? Good.
My name is Julie McBurkin. I want to start off by saying that my heart in presenting this statement to you is that no more children are exposed to inappropriate material through Central DeWitt Middle School Health, Family, and Consumer Sciences class for both 7th and 8th grade. I love the DeWitt School District. I'm glad that we're here, but this has been one thing that has beyond disappointed me and scared me for our students. But I want you to understand my heart behind what I'm presenting tonight and what I'm saying. And I also think it's important that you know that yes, I've talked to the teacher, and yes, I've taken my concerns to administration with no actionable response other than just go talk to the teacher, which is where I started. I made Dr. Peterson aware of my concern 4 years ago, which was before the book that has since been pulled and talked about. So this was without that book even in play. I followed up with him 2 years later, and I'm not placing blame on you. I'm just kind of giving a scenario of where I've been. So people know I've done my due diligence to try to make this correct. Followed up with him 2 years later, when my second child was going to have this class, and I was told to talk to the teacher. This year, the year that my oldest son had Mrs. Gaffney's health class was when he was in 8th grade.
Can we please not?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had the health class was 4 years ago. He was in 8th grade. This class was what I would call, it was the pre-book. So it was not in play. There were numerous lessons that made him feel extremely uncomfortable, so much so that he would actually have like mild or mini seizures. There was a unit on how advertising affects our purchases, and I asked for him to do this at home with Wade and I, because we were really keeping an eye on what he was learning. And the teacher okayed that. So I thought, it'd be something like, everyone cool has this shirt, it'd be cool to buy the shirt. But it wasn't. It was, and I brought an example of it tonight. It was, see how the S in Skittles is next to EX in extreme. It spells sex. And multiple other examples that all stretch the imagination to make it sexual in nature. This was an advertising unit. It was not the health, like the sexual health unit. This was an advertising unit and how you make decisions. One last night, I actually got a phone call from the teacher letting me know that my son should probably not even come to class that next day, like her class specifically, but instead go straight to the library to have an alternative assignment because she had explicit pictures, and those were her words, explicit pictures that she was showing that she had cut out of magazines, and she was sure it would bother him. It was at that point I reached out to Dr. Peterson. He said that he would have to look into it because topics that are explicit should not be taught, and that he would look into it. So 2 years later, my second son had the class, and that was the spring of 2020. So he only had 2 months of the class. He didn't have the full experience like others did, but enough of experience to have negative effects and exposure to material that have left a lasting and negative impact on my son. My son was the kind of kid who talks to us. He tells us all about his day. He's a very open kid, very chatty. And we didn't know until like this past spring when we were kind of asking him about it, that the teacher told all the kids in the class not to tell anyone what they talked about. What is said in the classroom stays in the classroom. So a year later, when we were discussing this, you could actually see him. He was like, never mind. And we're like, you're not going to get in trouble. And like, we had to keep reassuring him because they had been told not to tell. And he's also a big rule follower. So he was not, but he did eventually open up and tell us quite a bit of stuff. So the first day of class for him, the kids were to yell out any word for sex or sexual body parts. Then as the class, they would decide which were appropriate. So the teacher told the class that she was writing these words on a presentation size paper instead of the board. And this is verbatim what he says she said. So I mean, I'm just letting you know, because she didn't want the 7th graders or Mr. Pickup to see it as it might start concerns. I'm not going to say the words because I respect all of you in here and I don't know who's on the other side of the Zoom, but it was the B word, the C word, the F word, and so on, as you can imagine. So her and the kids discussed the words at length, if they were appropriate or not appropriate, and those 3 were obviously not allowed, but not because they were inappropriate, but because of her opinion on them. So, but they were allowed to use words such as boobies, dick, ball sack, boner, jerking off were allowed to be used. In a classroom, we really should stick with scientific words, appropriate words. We know they may use it out there, with their buddies or whatever, but that's not how you teach a class, in my opinion. The kids were told not to use these words if Mr. Pickup, Mrs. Selzer, Jen Vance, or Dr. Peterson walked in. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. I'm just saying Joseph, 5 minutes.
I'll give you a little bit longer, just wrap up.
But
please.
now-
You can just
Okay,
wrap.
yeah, I
Thank
understand. Okay. There was also the penis game, the game where you can yell the word penis the loudest. My son went to class, went on to discuss with the teacher that they thought could yell at the loudest. So, and it goes on and on with issues like this. So the book choice is by far the most concerning, but the curriculum that the teacher pulls in is concerning and inappropriate. Children in this class were covering up the pictures because it bothered them. They asked to have Post-it notes to cover up the pictures when they looked at vocabulary words. I believe the Central DeWitt School Administration and School Board needs to take responsibility with what kids were exposed to, but so does the teacher, and the administration needs to deal with that. There are many parents that have no idea what their kids are put through. Some just learned this past weekend what their kids were put through. And in my opinion, I think it needs to be kind of like you mentioned, transparent, that this is what your kids, what people's kids are exposed to. And I agree that education is power, no matter the subject, that kind of education or environment is not what I want my child learning in.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, my name is Amanda Grubel. And I'm gonna speak on the other side of the comments that we've heard thus far. I didn't know any of this, that I hadn't heard any of this until yesterday, seeing some things start to pop up on Facebook. I have a different perspective than some of the people who have spoken thus far. I don't know if it's because I worked at the school. I don't know if it's because I, as a social worker, I've worked with kids who were in tough situations. But number one, I definitely want to speak in favor of science-based sex education for our students. I know that we don't like to think about 13 and 14-year-olds having sex, but the fact is that a lot of them are, and a lot of them don't have the information that they need to make healthy decisions. As far as some of the other things that have been mentioned, I spoke with my son, who has also been through that class within the last few years. Here's what I heard. The students weren't told that they couldn't talk about the content outside of class. They were told that if somebody else shared something that might be embarrassing, they shouldn't go around telling other people about it who weren't in the class. Respect your classmates' confidentiality. Respect the things that they share, trusting that you're going to not use it to bully them. So I know our kids, my son is guilty of it as anybody else. Sometimes hear pieces of stuff and apply it maybe not the way it was intended. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but this was, from another kid who was in that same class. Showing pictures of genitals, pictures of STIs. Our kids have already seen this stuff. They know this stuff. They know it, whether they've found it online, whether they've seen it in, at their friend's house or whatever. They know what genitals look like. They need to know what sexually transmitted infections, those results, because that could happen to them. They need to understand how serious that is. Talking about readiness for sex, using other words for genitals, I see those things as ways that this teacher attempted to help the kids relate the content to their lives, to the things that they hear in the hallway and in the locker room, so that they can connect those things back to, oh, this is what it means when this person says this. Or, maybe that isn't an appropriate word to use because it makes people uncomfortable. I'm glad they talked about it. So I just encourage us to be careful how much we want to censor what's happening in our classrooms with our teachers, and make sure that we are not acting out of our own discomfort, but that we're acting in a way that provides our kids with what they need. So thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
My name is Wade Birkin. Again, I appreciate you guys bringing this up and having the transparency on this. The challenge that I have as a dad is trying to balance, what my kids are gonna be exposed to in school and educating them, and also having them grow up with the values that I think are important. The fact that I've had to explain some pretty tough things to my son because of some things that he's seen and heard in class that I should not have to explain to a 13 or 14-year-old as far as different sexual positions or sexual acts. Because I do have the conversation as far as sex and appropriate, and that, I do believe abstinence is possible. And so there's concern there. The idea to me that, well, everyone's going to be, kids are going to have sex, and I get that. But at the same time, kids are going to drink, but we're not sitting there telling them how to mix up cocktails and Manhattans and old fashions in school. When we tell them there's dangers of drinking, but there's an age-appropriate level of conversation, okay, that you have with alcohol, with sex, with drugs, and it changes from middle school to high school, and even from freshman to senior. And I just ask that we be cognizant of that age appropriateness. I'm not saying don't have the conversation, just make sure it is age appropriate, and to think that, and to not say, well, on the sex side is one thing, but I'm not sitting there telling my kids, like I said, how to mix up a Jaeger bomb or any of that other stuff with that same mentality. So, and if I'm not mistaken, if my kids came to school with, talking about some of the stuff, they'd probably raise some attentions of the staff, and they call me, and I may get a phone call, hey, is your kid drinking or what have you? So I said, all I'm asking is age appropriate conversations, not say don't have the conversation, but just age appropriate for where they're at, and respect where those families are at as well. There are some kids that I think that were probably very shocked because their family does not. It's not that they're against it. They just have a very different way of addressing it. So I just ask, again, just age appropriateness. Thank you.
Anyone else have a different? Go ahead.
I just have one comment. I encourage the school board, the administration, and the teachers to be open and honest about what you're teaching in the classroom, and be open with parents if they ask. Any parent should be allowed to see the curriculum that their child is being exposed to in any class in any of the schools in this school district. And I'm not just talking about the health class. There are a number of other classes that might have curriculums that a parent might object to. And they should have the opportunity to see that and express their objection, or even extract their student from that situation if they don't want them exposed to that curriculum. So I encourage you to be open and honest about that, not just with this health class, but with all classes.
Sir, can you give your name for our
James Coomer.
Oh, yeah. Supposed to stand up and say your name when you speak. Start over.
I was gonna whisper it to you, but then I was like, they're gonna wonder what I'm whispering.
Coomer, C-O-O-M-E-R.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other? And we've kind of followed the same trend line with the comments. So go ahead. I'll give you one more. Go ahead.
Oh,
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
My name is Jeff Mouse. I'm
Thank
one of the pastors here in town, so I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of the religious community, as well as parents. And my concern is just that we would be able to, I appreciate the meeting we're having, the transparency and openness here. And I guess just a few questions, just reiterate some things I've heard today, but mostly in light of making sure that the parents have the ability to make some choices for how they raise their children, how we teach our children, and we're communicating with one another. I appreciate, having since moved to DeWitt, that seems to be an open relationship with the schools and the churches and with the parents, so that we're able to have those conversations. And so just some of the questions I wrote down today, since I'm pretty new to this conversation, but some of the questions I had that I would love to just see in that transparency that's opened up to the public would be, what are the sex education programs that are being used? What's the funding recipient of those programs? Just so we can have an idea of what the worldview, what the motivations are behind the groups that are putting this material and this curriculum out, so that the parents can make educated decisions as to, again, what are the motivations behind the material that's being out there? Is it a private group? Is it the Iowa Department of Health, or something else? Also, what are the policies that are being in place? I think a few people have said that already, so just keep that brief. What are the policies in place regarding parent notification, regarding parent consent to the classes? Or is there an opt-in? Is there an opt-out? And is there a place that we can see those things publicly, whether it's on the website or it's sent home to parents or made public for the community? That would be helpful for us as parents, for us in the community. I homeschool my children, so it's not something I'm on the public school board often. So just be great to be able to have access to that or know where to find that access. Thirdly, is there any place or provision for parents to examine their curriculum so that they can make educated choices for their children? It kind of goes along with the first of who's writing the curriculum, but is there any place that we can see the curriculum? If there's going to be pictures posted in the books, we'd just like to know what's going on, what's out there, and what's part of it. And then lastly, what's the nature of the material that's being used to illustrate anatomy, regarding sexual acts, even regarding just implementation of birth control. We know that we want things to be science-based, and we want, if it's a sex education class, it's part of our health classes. We know that's to be a part of the system, but we'd like to know, how are those things being taught? Are they photographs? What's the difference between, let's do a video? Why not have a live demonstration? What's the nature of those things, or are they diagrams? And I'm not trying to speak to one way or another regarding what you should do with that, but we'd like to know as parents what's being used for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say on the board agenda, if you go into the 8th grade health textbook, it has the national health standards listed there of what we're required to teach. So I assume most of you haven't looked at that prior to coming in. Take a look at that as well, because that will open some lines of communication as well and give you an idea as to what is there. Anyone else that has a different opinion, or I don't mean to cut people short by any means, but if we're going to continue based on the amount of people here, obviously we understand the importance of the topic. Does anyone have a different point of view or something else specific that they want to say on this topic or any other topic? Not yet.
I would like to speak towards that topic that she's on too. So.
Well, if you want to speak towards that topic, you got to, you better do it right now.
But is there any more on this topic? I don't want to take away from one.
Okay. Anybody else? I feel free. I appreciate all the we appreciate all the commentary. Obviously, tonight is the board conversation about the health book and the textbooks. No action items regarding that tonight. So it is again, it's just information discussion. So if there's different topics somebody wants to speak on, feel free. Oh,
I got one more thing to add with sex education. I had just basically heard about this the other day too, and I was just like,
what's your name, ma'am? Sorry.
Alicia Ellison. And I was gravely concerned because, well, we had moved, and so my daughter didn't have this class. And so if she would have, I know I would have been, you probably would have had me knocking on your door too. Because some of it really disturbed me as well. And I was just kind of confused. And I even asked my boys, what did you guys learn in this health class when you guys were? And they were all like basically chuckling, saying they had illustrations and it was more just basic stuff. And it seemed like it totally went in a totally different direction. So I'm like wondering, where did it go from 4 years ago to now? How did it change so much that what our kids were taught back then, is it good enough? And now we need more graphic information. I'm like, how did that, I don't know. But so that's just, I'll just throw that out there. But anyway, I'm just reading this from another parent that gave this to me to read. So it's more just on a generalization of exposing our kids to so much sexuality too early. So it's just information. So children's brains are literally being shaped by their experiences, and most of us know those experiences will determine much of their character throughout their lives. Due to the high neuroplasticity, any values or ideas that are learned from exposure to highly sexual things will have lasting impact on a child's life. In addition, habits built during this time are what become the triggers that drive the continual use of sexualized images, pornography. Along with habits and triggers that are created from this exposure, research suggests other negative effects also carry over. Youth at this age lack the cognitive and emotional maturity that is necessary to make wise and healthy decisions regarding their sexuality, and ill prepared to cope with the consequences of any of all sexual activity. The development of adolescent sexuality includes not only physical development, but cognitive, emotional, social, and moral development. These developmental areas do not informally advance at the same rate for each child. Early exposure to sexual content may have the following undesirable effects. For early sex, psychological science found that more teens were exposed to sexual content the earlier they start having sex, and the likely are higher that were to have casual sex and unprotected sex. In another study, boys who were exposed to sexual explicit media are 3 times more likely to engage in oral sex and intercourse 2 years after exposure than non-exposed boys. Other undesirable effects could be high-risk sex, sex, love, and relationship addictions, and sexual violence. Early exposure by the age of 14 to pornography and other explicit material may increase the risk of child becoming a victim of sexual violence or acting out sexually against another child. Viewing sexual things that are not age appropriate can also lead to pornography addiction. Pornography changes the layout of your brain. It is as addictive as drugs. It can lead to depression and destructive relationships. Consider this story from a 17-year-old girl who anonymously shared this story with the Over 18 Project. One day at school, we were talking about women's issues and how women are portrayed in the media. The topic of pornography came up, so I decided, since it was discussed in class, there was nothing wrong with researching more about it at home. What I didn't expect was that by doing research about what I heard at school, falling into a dark world of porn was not hard. I had no idea how quickly porn could consume my life. Just weeks before, I had never really thought about porn, and now it's on my mind all the time. For this young girl, simply research on what was perceived to be a harmless topic turned into a dark, all-consuming habit. Is our district going to play a role in shaping our children this way? With the last 4 years and the amount of evidence with lessons, activities, book choices, and teacher influence, it's hard to believe that our district is keeping these children in their highest priorities. I trust that we will do the right thing by our kids, and I think enough people have spoken about their concerns, and I trust you guys to do the right thing. So I just think enough red flags have come up that we just need to take a time out and review what's been being taught and move forward from that. I mean, that's all we can do. So that's how we do that.
Who was the source for that letter? If you're going to read it here, we need to.
I'd rather not say.
Okay, it's unfortunate. All right, who else do we have to speak? Go for it.
Ashley Stebbins, and I don't want to take away from what you may hear later. I just want to voice my concern and opinion in regards to the rebranding of our district. I was totally in agreement with the renaming of our district and feel like all the proper channels were taken for that. There was a petition made from the community. There was also involvement of our students in a survey and a lot of information beyond that. I think there was a lot of look back at history when we came up with the new name, and I was all on board. Things that have recently been brought to light is that we are only to be using certain brands that have not, from what I could see, been put into policy, but only have a marketing section on our website. I totally get that, and I'm glad that we went through a rebranding process. My concern from some of the communication that I've been made aware of is that we're being told that that's the only things that we can be using. I come from a health field that has gone through a rebranding process as well. What I've been told as a supervisor and as a leader in that field is that I have to use our brands, but they can go along with other logos. It would be like telling me I cannot present a PowerPoint at my company without putting any other icons on my PowerPoint to go along with what I'm trying to get across. A brand does not say that you cannot use sport-specific logos. A brand of a school does not say that you cannot put masks next to things that are associated with the drama department. baseballs next to things that are associated with baseball, basketballs associated with things that are next to basketball. I have really deep concern that the same standards that were followed to rename our district were not taken when we thought about our mascot that I can see, or our logo for our mascot that I can see. I have read through the last 5 years of board meetings to see if anything was brought up in board meetings or went through policy. I do see that we did do a marketing rebrand. A lot of that was focused on making sure that our Facebook accounts and our everything was all together. But I see that we invited 35 to 40 people to a meeting to discuss our new logos and brands. And to me, inviting 35 to 40 people versus making that open for discussion and looking at the history behind the logos that were already present and how people use those and what their thoughts behind completely removing that and saying these are no longer able to be used. That's how I'm feeling right now. Maybe that's not the case, but I really feel like we're getting told that there is one way or the highway. And I just don't think that's appropriate in helping to make a community support make them feel pride and support in what's behind me. I guess I'm getting more and more concerned that we aren't looking at the pride that our kids have put into some of the logos that they have behind them. My son specifically went through the baseball program, and the logo that the baseball team uses means a lot to him. And for us to say that sport-specific logos are no longer able to be used because we have a new rebrand of the district, I'm very offended. And I think that we're telling our students that the brand of our school is more important than our students. Our students have worked hard and have worn those logos beyond just the last 5 years. And those logos mean a lot to them. My kids look back and remember the state tournament. You can't just tell, I'm sorry, it's very frustrating to me. And I guess one of the comparisons that keeps coming up is that Nike or John Deere or all those places have one logo. Yes, they do. But did you know that when John Deere talks about agriculture, they also show a tractor? When they talk about your lawn and garden equipment, they show a lawnmower. They've never said you can't use other logos alongside the John Deere logo. You look at Nike. Michael Jordan is on half of their shoes because of the Michael Jordan, Air Jordan brand. That's a part of Nike. If we're saying that we can only use the district design logos for anything, I think we're making a big mistake. That's all.
All right, thank you. Anybody else on that topic? I'll let you wait for a minute. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to bring you in a minute. All right. That would end the public forum then. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. In just a minute. Let's move on to administrative reports then. Dan, do you want to start or do you want to end it? End it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for all your support this past school year during the pandemic, especially the board. Our commencement was once again wonderful. Thanks, Dr. Peterson, for helping make that happen. Anybody that was there saw it was a beautiful day. And then we had the second annual, if you will, senior cruise. Hopefully that's a tradition. If the weather permits, it's kind of nice for us to be outside. I just wanted to let you know that 99% of those who started 4 years ago walked across that stage that day, which was a pretty proud day. 2 more from the 2020 school year have since received their diploma. So as we mentioned to you, we don't give up on them. We keep working with them. And one other thing that Dr. Peterson and Mrs. Vance kind of allowed us to do with some ESSER funds, I think, and we had some kids struggling online learning, as we know, and we had some kids get behind credit-wise. So we offered a summer credit recovery the past 2 weeks, and kids basically were targeted that were behind to graduate with their peers, especially if they're a freshman or sophomore, because some of the other kids were in good standing. So 34 students participated. 8 have since recovered some credit. Because we have access to Edgenuity, or what's called E2020, we're using that. Some teachers developed some extra curriculum for kids that were right there on the border. So I think that it'll be really important when they walk back in August that they're back to at least being close to where they should be, because we know what research says about a freshman that gets behind. They typically do not make it to graduate with their peers. Our goal is that they will. And I just wanted to thank Jason Lansing, Mary Beth Shively, and Carl Small. Carl Small and Mary Beth are our two counselors, 9, 12, 7, and 8. Carl is, and then Jason Lansing is a wonderful person with recovery of students, and he keeps on them. He's watching them, on E2020, we can kind of target where they're at. So by August 1st, we're hoping there's a few more that have recovered, so they're in a good place.
Sorry, I was just trying to check the agenda.
You're telling me my 5 minutes is up? I can be done. Most people don't like to listen to me anyway, but this is a positive thing too.
George is never.
You're fine. It happens
George
to
is
me.
never invited by
It's
5
happened to me
minutes.
too. Anyway, it's a good thing. So hopefully we'll.
34 participated, 8 have gained credit so far, but the others are
And
ongoing.
the other 26 of the 34 are still recovering some stuff, and we're monitoring them all 4 of us have access to monitor their E2020. Our kids kept their computers over the summer as well. Not that they need our computers to do E2020, but they do feel comfortable with them. So we're hoping in August I have some better data, even more to update you on, because there was one that recovered today, a couple classes, and it's awesome. So
George, it wasn't just a 2-week, it's ongoing.
I will
throughout the summer?
rephrase that. It was 2 weeks in person. We feel it's really important to get them with
In
us.
person.
And some couldn't, but we wanted them there. And then actually our nutrition department provided lunch and breakfast for them. They signed up for it, and they got it on Tuesday morning, and they were able to use our microwave in the teacher's lounge. But 22 students actually at one time were in the ICN room. And the other ones we just communicate. Some of them have transportation issues and things like that. We go pick them up too. So yeah, they were only in person for 2 weeks, and then we let them.
They can continue through the summer.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Up till we kind of said August 1st is the deadline. If they get to 50%, we'll continue them into the school year in a resource class possibly.
That's awesome.
So it was a good thing.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll go. I'm gonna piggyback. I'll talk about 2 things. One, summer programming for our elementary students at Extrand as well. And then I'm gonna get into just some of the work that we've done administratively in regards to the new administrative standards that have come out. So just to hit on the summer programming, we'll start summer programming tomorrow for our first day. We're gonna have programming that'll last 2 weeks or in June, and then 2 weeks in July, for a total of 4 weeks. We'll be going 3 days each week for 3 hours. We are going to also, like George had mentioned, we're going to use the ESSER funds, which has been great because I was going to be in a dilemma last year. Obviously, we got cut short for COVID because Mrs. Vance had used DCAT funding, and then that had kind of gone away. So I was going to have to figure out a way to be able to fund it. So that has, that's something, at least for the next 2 years, that we could probably count on to be able to run that programming that we've ran each and every summer. But that'll run 2 weeks in June, 2 weeks in July. 3 hours a day. I think we have like 6 teachers. Our ratio is awesome. We have like 55 kids that are signed up. So the ratio, and we identify those students using our FAST benchmarks. So those students, and then this year we were kind of a little bit later in regards to getting the information out. So we were actually able to qualify more students that did not meet benchmark in the spring. So that upped the number of students or families that had received notification that their students had qualified for it. So I'm excited about continuing to offer programming for those students that need it. I got a lot of positive feedback from the parents in regards to just getting, having an opportunity for their kids to continue their learning. We were really struggling because it was one of those things, with our staff, it was a difficult year of, do you continue with having them work, especially with the students and those types of things. But we worked collectively with the staff and really tried to find a sweet spot of, the number of hours per day, the number of days per week, and just how many total weeks we were going to offer that programming. I think we found, an appropriate amount so our kids and our staff can come back refreshed here in the fall. So in addition to that, yeah.
Just a quick question on that. So you said that you kind of put your numbers in a little later, so then now you had some spring kids that maybe.
Yep.
So do you anticipate maybe doing that next year again?
The only, and we do, the reason that we had done it, just a little bit of history, the reason that we had done it like earlier and started that process in March was because we needed to get that information out in regards to transportation and everything. We're starting, obviously, the second to last week in June. Well, we had to have all of our programming in and done. So we needed to start basically right after school ended, because all those
The
funds needed to be
money
used in
ends
June.
June 30th, so you had to use the money before you lost it.
Okay.
So now we have that extension of being able to use this. So now we weren't in such a rush to be able to get the transportation. Obviously, you're working with the building custodial staff of trying to figure out, I mean, they've already started the process. Yeah, exactly. And trying to work around, what spaces we're going to utilize for that programming as well. So, and I will say too, I really appreciated the work of Becky Green and Doug Crank and being able to get the transportation set up, David Mess, as well as Deb Warwick, and being able to work around the programming as well, because I know that's a little bit of an inconvenience. So there's a lot of players that are a part of this to be able to make this a possibility. So certainly appreciative of their work as well. Any other questions on that? Yep, that's a great question. And then the standards, there was new administrative standards that had come out. So I think it'd been over, 2 weeks ago, we spent administratively a day and a half reviewing those and really digging into them and kind of having individual reflection time and then team reflection time in regards to where we felt we had fallen, and then just pulling in some different artifacts and different things that, different systems that we have in place, and the things that we feel pretty good about, and the things that we feel like we need to, work on. And I can honestly say personally, it was probably some of the best team time that we had spent together, of just reflecting and really having good conversation. And obviously during the year, you don't have those opportunities, that sustained time where you're not, getting interrupted or pulled away. So to be able to do that, for about 10 hours was really great. We were able to sit down and set goals for each of ourselves and get those shared with Dan, and then really trying to centralize everything too, from what our teachers are working on within their teams, what they're working on in their individual goals, and then really having those play themselves out within our building goals as well. So we really have interconnected systems that, for years, I feel like in education, there was always all these things that were tough to really see how they fit in. So we're really just trying to make sure that all that stuff's interconnected and that we're working on centralizing things. And it makes it a lot easier for us to communicate to you monthly as to the progress towards some of the goals and some of the work that's taking place within each of our buildings.
Thank you. So for over a year now, I mean, every meeting we've talked about different things that have to do with COVID and changes we've had to make, and so I don't want to belabor it, but I just want to publicly thank, and I'm sure this is true for every single building, but I'm going to point out our buildings, everybody, our teachers, our custodians, everybody. Last summer, you're just diving into it, trying to figure it all out, and then you kind of put things into place, and then you're just going day by day. That last month or last few weeks, when things started opening up, and the mask went away, and this went away, and that went away, it almost kind of like it was a revelation, like, geez, we really changed a lot of things, because all of a sudden you're getting all these questions. Well, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And you forget about all the changes that people had to make. And so I want to say that our, when you really look back at everything that everybody did, and did it with a smile on their face most days. It's tremendous. And you guys too, because you guys supported everything, whether that was, having to answer questions, or whether that was, the financial side, or whatever it was. So thank you, and thank everybody for that. That culminated in our last day of the year. We have a 6th grade talent show that is kind of a tradition in our building, and everybody, last year we had it, but it was online, and it was good for what we could do. That's kind of what we thought we were going to have to do this year. About May 1st, we said, no, let's do it face to face. We weren't quite sure how that was going to work yet at that point, but we were going to make the adjustments that we had to make, and then everything fell into place. We could just do it like normal. But again, a lot of work went into that, and that was tremendous. Tara Hahn, Heidi Streets, Bree McGill, 3 people really headed up. And but 6th grade is just a great way to send the 6th graders out into middle school. So that was tremendous. And the last thing, remodeling. So the remodeling that you guys approved a couple months ago, that has started. I don't have an office right now. It's it's dust and shambles, but they're making great progress on it. It's looking good. And the last thing, just some data for you to bring. We don't have all of our ISASP data back, but we do. This year they had called on-demand reports, where basically after 10 days after you take any kind of objective test, you get you get numbers, you don't get the analysis like we'll get eventually, hopefully here in a month or two. But we really get some hard, fast numbers. And I do want to share those because they're very, very positive. Across our building, kids that fell in the proficiency or the advanced range in math, it ranged from 4th to 6th grade. We were in grade levels were ranged between 71% and 82% as far as being proficient. And overall, we were at 76% of our kids proficient or in the advanced category. And then in our ELA category, which was the language and the reading tests, ranged from 77 to 86%. For an overall in our building, we were at 80%, which was, again, looking back from where we were 2 years ago, tremendously. So again, considering we were 3 months short last year and just some of the things they had to go through this year, very, very, very excited to see that. So
When's your building supposed to be done?
1st of August. That's what I'm hoping for.
I hope for you too. I hope for you.
Well,
as well.
I would like July 15th, but I know that's not gonna happen. August 1st.
Very cool. Awesome. Jen, you can speak now. You can wait.
I'll hold off, that's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so administrative reports, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the situation we found ourselves in with TJ Sycamores donation to the baseball team. The sign that's up, or was up, the windscreen that was put up. I sent out a letter last week at some point, just explaining how we got where we are, when it was approved by the board, things that I've said through the process. Some were accurate and some were not, and certainly apologize for their inaccuracies. So you guys have all seen that letter, and you know where I am at this point with what I said in the letter as far as putting the windscreen that was purchased back up. It is now up. We would be ordering a replacement for that with our logos on those to be put up next year, because it takes 6 to 8 weeks from the time they're ordered to be received, and we haven't even received a proof on those yet. It just takes some time to get those. And then the record sign that was purchased, that we would replace the 4-fingered glove artwork on there with one of our Sabres logos, put that back up, and then order a new backing for that sign instead of what was put up with as well. And certainly there were mistakes made during this process, all the way back to January of 2020, and bringing it to the board for approval without seeing what it would look like. So there certainly needs to be, well, there has been reflection on this and realizing where things could have taken a better turn, but just when it comes to board approval of donations and those kinds of things, having a process in place that those things need to go through. And we have an example tonight of a donation of a bench for Todd Cox, and that has gone through a process of design. With Mr. Pickup, we met with Chuck and talked about where it's going to go and those kinds of things. Just making sure that there's a process in place. But right now we're dealing with the baseball donation, and you guys have seen where I stand on that, and certainly open that up for, if you'd like to have conversation back and forth or whatever you'd like, we can certainly do that.
Obviously, this is a little bit different because it's not typically how we run things, but I did ask Amy to hold off on comments, knowing that TJ's also on the Zoom during the public, because I knew it was going to be on as administrative reports. If you would like to speak towards it at this point, please do. We'll have TJ, but we are going to have some conversation board-wise about it. He has to go real quick.
I'm giving you guys copies. I have some pictures included in here. Sorry, it's a little easier to understand. I'm just gonna read this because I've kind of prepared this ahead of time. My name is Amy Sycamore, and I'm here to discuss the unfortunate status of my son's donation. I don't think I need to go through all the details with you because you guys are all aware of them through emails. I initially came to Dr. Peterson as a mom and a community member, not as a coach's wife. I feel Dr. Peterson was dismissive early on with his first statement to me when he said, quote, "It's too bad this couldn't have come from our coach," end of quote. Unfortunately, my husband and TJ's dad has not chosen to get involved because as a baseball coach, he doesn't want it to affect his coaching position. He wants to focus on his players and winning games. While I appreciate Dr. Peterson's apologies and ownership of this unfortunate situation, the words of our superintendent have cut deep, both personally and to our community, as I'm sure you're all aware of from the emails that have been flooding in. Dr. Peterson said, quote, "We have a program that has gone rogue with decisions for a district facility. I can't allow that to happen," end of quote. His portrayal is inaccurate. Everything that we have done was approved by the school board and administration was always included. It seems Dr. Peterson made several abrupt decisions without thinking, including taking down the sign without communicating with anyone else, now causing many harsh feelings with our family and throughout the community. I'm here in good faith to represent TJ's wishes and to seek a compromise that can be mutually beneficial. What has been proposed to us is not a compromise. We're willing to have approved district logos added to the windscreen and the sign, but a fair compromise would be to leave the existing baseball artwork untouched and not just for this season. Covering them up or getting rid of them completely is not a compromise. It's our understanding that this board may be willing to explore a new policy and add sports-specific artwork in the future. I encourage you to decide on this promptly, as a decision could save us all a lot of effort and money. It would keep the baseball artwork intact. TJ designed the sign and the windscreen himself. He did this with the best of intentions and was never told of any branding policies. It's not logical to cover up the baseball artwork when you're looking to include this type of policy in the future. I feel it's important to share the significance of the baseball artwork with you. I won't share the entire story, but to sum it up, at the beginning of every season, Coach Sycamore talks about playing old school baseball. The original baseball glove was a 4-finger glove. He incorporates the acronym HRD into this. The first finger stands for H, which represents honesty. Second finger stands for R, which represents respect. The third finger stands for D, which represents do the right thing. This all equals the fourth finger, which stands for old school baseball. That's how baseball is meant to be played, the Sabre way. So as you can see, this baseball artwork is more than artwork. It's something that connects past baseball players with the players today and will connect those in the future. I'm providing you with examples of what we're proposing. It adds approved Sabre logos to the windscreen and the sign, while leaving the baseball artwork as it is. Please consider immediately creating a new policy to allow this. What's more important, the school marketing plan or our current students and alumni? Thank you for your time and consideration. I apologize for the ink went bad on my printer, so it looks a little different than what it will look like. But basically, we want to focus on the logos and where they're at and what they are.
Can you hear us?
You can try.
TJ, are you there?
Not yet. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Wait for it.
Hello?
I think I hear him.
Might just be.
Hello?
Go ahead, TJ.
This is TJ Sycamore. It has come to light that the Central DeWitt Community School District, and more specifically Dan Peterson, has an issue with the branding of my donation.
Mute yourself.
Records.
I'm
Is
going.
everything okay?
I'm supposed to. Hold on.
So maybe throw them over there.
Above that, the one above it. Try again, TJ.
Can you guys hear me better?
Nice work. Go ahead, DJ.
All right, thank you. It has come to light that the Central DeWitt Community School District, more specifically Dan Peterson, has an issue with the branding of my donations record sign and the windscreen for the baseball field. In an effort to address these valid concerns of including district-approved logos on the donations, I suggested that we added some approved logos to the existing signs and screens. These suggestions were met with swift, no-nonsense attitude of only including district-approved logos on the donations. When designing these donations myself this past winter, I was unaware of the seemingly most important detail. However, now that the issue has been brought to light, I'm most willing to add the district-approved logos to my design and understand the need to do so. What I'm asking is simply to just keep the four-finger glove logo on the record sign and not cover it up. Any additions of any other district approved logos, especially the ones below that I put on the sheet that you guys should have, are pleasantly accepted by me and I think would be great. As for the windscreen, I leave it up to the school district to decide what they want to do, whether or not that is add the approved CD logo or replace the four-finger glove completely and replace that with a paw. And really my main thing here is the four-finger glove logo on the record sign. That's my big thing. So lastly, after treating this situation with the utmost professionalism and dignity, I feel as we've really gotten nowhere. It's pretty unfortunate that this is how you treat the donors and the alumni of this school. And I've been alarmed by the lack of courtesy that I've encountered throughout this whole situation. From the perspective of someone who proudly calls DeWitt, Iowa home, is a Sabre alum and a donor, this experience has definitely brought me to question where my loyalty lies and definitely where theirs does as well. I followed all the correct avenues making this donation to the school board and was simply trying to add something inspiring and incentivizing for our student athletes. The handling of this situation is disappointing and has left me questioning my desire for future donor involvement with this school district. I was hoping the school district would be willing to work with someone who is willing to promote and invest in the school district after the misunderstandings this past month. But as we've seen, the school district and Dan Peterson have shown little to no intentions of working with me on this. So I guess in my last effort to solve this current issue and aid future endeavors, I just respectfully ask the board to at least help make one compromise and keep that four-finger glove on the record sign. So I appreciate your guys' consideration and thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Question? Dan, can you give us a little bit, just a background on people who don't know, that I guess we all do, the way it works? We approve the donations. We don't approve or we haven't in the past approved design or those types of things.
Well, there have been situations where we have, and that'd be the best case scenario, and that we actually see it, especially since the rebranding that we've talked about, that we don't have a lot of different things going up around the facilities. Prior to that, I mean, there are all kinds of logos around the district, and but since that time, I mean, anything that would be put up or replaced around the district, whether donation or the district paying for it, would be in line with those.
And I understand that. I mean, when we approved TJ specific, we approved the donation of the sign, but we didn't have.
You didn't have the.
That's what I'm saying. There was no. And those evolved through TJ and conversations with athletic directors, or how?
I'm honestly not sure. The first time I saw it was when it was up.
TJ, did you have interactions with Mr. Kreider and Mr. Burt regarding these? Did they see the designs before they were put up?
Yes, Mr. Kreider should have seen the designs. I remember drawing it. It was on a piece of paper. I drew it with a blue pen. I mean,
he never saw the proofs or anything. Did we ever have access to the proofs?
Yeah, I have no idea about that. All I know is Mr. Kreider should have been the one to deal with that. That's who it was submitted to.
But it was TJ, this is Angela Reingens. But it was like a sketch that you and Kreider spoke about. It wasn't a design or printer proof or anything like that first.
Not printer proof. It was just simply a sketch. Yep.
Yeah, and we were never asked for one though either. If we would have been asked, we would
I
have provided.
understand. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get the whole process here. When they arrived, did the team put them up? Was Bert made aware, Jared made aware of it? Did our
Yes, the
our
maintenance.
maintenance put them up?
Mr. Berger, yes,
It was volunteers that put them up.
Volunteers put them up.
yes, but they were involved in the decision on where to put it. And the team put the windscreen up. The boys all did that together.
I was on the board when we did the branding. I think most of us were, except for maybe, I think Bob came in late, it came in right after that, right? You were here for that, right? And I think branding is extremely important. I think we have to have a consistent brand like you see here, like you see there, like you see on all of our stuff. And I think that permanent fixtures, such as the sign that TJ donated, anything that's outside of the awards bank, those things, they need to have the specific branding on them. With that said, I also think we need to have, and I've expressed this to Dan numerous times.
Yeah.
We need to have a policy that lays this all out. That's pretty obvious. I think we're all in agreement with that. I also think we need to have individualism between our sports. If we're going to allow our individual sports to sell clothing with different logos on them, then we need to be open to those, to having different logos per sport. I think those logos need to be set by our branding department, our marketing department, with input from the school. But there needs to be one for baseball. There needs to be one for football. There needs to be one for soccer and for tennis. And that can be used on clothing, apparel, the windscreen, those types of things. Things that are specific to that sport that stay on that sport. I can see it being done with softball, with the soccer team, those types of things. Football field. Someday when I get my turf field, putting a football specific on turf field, it's not gonna happen, but you know what I mean.
We're looking for naming rights.
Looking for naming rights. $50 will that work? Want to give me the seat. But I think I think the overall branding is extremely important, but I think that the individualism for sport is important too. I've got shirts from every sport that have the different logos that have been designed by the coaches, and quite frankly, or probably by the coaches. Quite frankly, those are things that are probably seen by as many or more people than the stuff that are at our parks, or at our school, because they're out walking around. We're at different schools with them. But I am very firm on the things that are permanent at our schools. The sign is outside the park itself, the stadium. It's on a common area. Even if it was in by the concession stand, that's still soccer, softball, baseball, those types of things. It's still a permanent fixture that's going to be there. It needs to have our main brand on it. The picture that's on here for the windscreen, I think it looks great. It takes up more room. It gets away more of the cornfield in the back. Adding, I'll stop and see if anyone else has any comments.
I agree that the sport needs its own identity. It's just a matter of what form that takes. I'm not an artistic or aesthetic guy. I don't understand the significance of the paw glove type thing. So I can't work with that a whole lot. I guess I agree that should go through some sort of branding process so that we get some consistency. What I have seen so far is the approved logos mixed with tennis ball or baseball or maybe not baseball, something else to provide some of that identity. Still keeps the primary logo, maybe the secondary logos. Not saying that's the right answer. I guess I'm just saying that there should be some flexibility. I don't know what form that should take, and I don't know if
I've given a lot of thought to this. I was very involved in the rebranding. I absolutely identified with having strong feelings for an individual logo. The original saber head in a shield is my saber from when I graduated. We had very successful athletic programs, and we recently moved and I cleaned out the box from high school, and I'm super excited. My daughter's wearing my state tournament t-shirt. She's cut it all up and destroyed it, but she's wearing it and it's super cool. And I still have my sweatshirt that has that logo head on it. It's yellow and it does not fit, but I have it and it's really important to me. So I understand where this logo is for the baseball tournament or for the baseball program. I was not aware of the baseball logo prior to, but my kids are just getting to the age of saber baseball for high school. I do feel very strongly that permanent structures should have the school approved logos on them. I'm very flexible with athletic specific logos or loose interpretations of the logo for apparel, because we can all only have so many things with that saber head on it or a CD. And the apparel is generally fundraisers for our individual programs. And I just get it. I mean, I've got a lot of saber gear and it all looks pretty similar. I wear a lot of purple. But I do that with pride. You know, in regards to the branding process, we worked really hard to be inclusive and bring in different groups, you know, inviting the public to those types of things to get that input and to respect and almost honor a little bit of the history of that shield and that saber, and kind of come back to our roots a little bit with this saber head and our CD logos and the paw, the claw. Is it a paw?
Paw.
And it's four-fingered. It's different than the current baseball artwork, but it's not the same. And I do feel really strongly that permanent structures need to have the actual approved branded logos. I am incredibly disappointed in the process that this went through. I think none of it was malicious. I think everyone did what they felt they should or what was best. Unfortunately, there was miscommunication or communication breakdowns on multiple levels of just sharing information back and forth, and I'm not putting blame on anyone specifically. And my heart hurts that we have an alum who had an amazing high school career and has gone on to do amazing things. Congratulations, TJ. And I want him to feel always proud that he is a Central DeWitt Saber. And the fact that he feels that his gift is not being appreciated is unfortunate and disheartening for me. It's not true. It's absolutely appreciated. But the reality versus the perception sometimes, it's the perception that matters. And I want to apologize for that because I do feel really bad about that. So we are working on having that process and policy very clearly identified, but that leaves us where we are right now, which is what is okay to do or what do we need to do to make it right and moving forward. And we do have a very strong history of everything that's been going up in our school has had these approved logos on it, these permanent structures. Things that are temporary, like uniforms and sweatshirts and t-shirts, we've been more lax on them. Some of them have looked pretty cool and some of them are complete misses. But again, they have a shorter life cycle. I think that's it.
I guess I would say that I apologize to Sycamas for where we're at today. I'm embarrassed of where we're at today because of this. I think back to that meeting when we approved these donations, and not one question was asked. And I asked myself, why didn't anybody ask any questions?
Right.
And it just, because in my mind, I thought we would trust our school employees to do the right thing. That didn't happen. And so that's why we are today, where we are here today. So because of that, I feel like we need to compromise in some fashion to make this right with all, even though it may cross hairs with our overall marketing scheme. We've done enough wrongs here that at some point we need to make a right. But I also want to say, putting certain things on permanent structures can be a very a loose thing, and I'm sure we're going to have this conversation shortly with our next donation. Was what if something happens to the sign? And what if in 10 years we want to change the sign? Then all of a sudden we have someone who donated it back here shaking their finger at us saying, well, I wanted it this way, and that's the way I want it to be forever. I don't know. I have a hard time running that through my head. Like, how long does that sign stay up, and so on and so forth. Those are things that we can talk about later, but I hate that we're here discussing this, but hopefully we can make this right and everyone can walk away pleased with the results.
Not sure how much more there is to say, but I mean, I struggle with this topic because I come from a marketing branding background, and so for when I have people at work approaching me about colors and fonts and logos, I'm the one sticking to it, because if I don't stick to it, who's gonna stick to it? However, I also understand that this donation is incredibly generous, that there is a ton of history, and this all makes me very uncomfortable, but I do feel too that, as Corey said, a permanent structure is there forever. And if there's turnover, if a coach leaves and all of a sudden the four-finger glove, what does that mean to the next coach or the next team? So when it comes down to permanent structure, I feel we gotta stick with our brand, we gotta stick with the colors, the fonts. See, I even the apparel and the uniforms, to me, to give that much freedom and leeway, it makes me uncomfortable. Because it's hard to rein it back in. So.
I would kind of pick up where I left off, because I kind of left it. I agree with Bob wholeheartedly as to what he said. Compromise needs to be made in some form. And it gets back to the individualism branding of individual sports. And what I mean by that is developing individual logos for those sports with involvement from the coach and whomever, so that we have one set brand for those coaches, for that team. Does that mean, and then on the sign out front, the large sign that we're talking about, having our main logo in the middle up front, and school approved individual team logos on the side. Is that the four-fingered one that they've been using forever? I think that needs to be left up to whomever is deciding those things. If it's us, then we have that conversation. But I think there needs to be some individualism, and if we decide to do some form of a saber paw, tennis, a saber paw, or whatever, however, our marketing team works with those people, and with the coach, or our marketing team works with the coaches and whomever they designate. If it comes out that it's that paw, then honestly, I'm okay with that, as long as it's approved. And since we don't have any approved individual sports logos now,
Not other than their school name and like
that's
softball.
That's what I mean. But if we go down that route where we have individual school logos, what's to say the paw that they have already now isn't the one that's approved, and we move on from there and keep it the way it is. I like the CD, quite frankly, on the wall, on the windscreen, better than having the logos out there. I think that logo would be pretty busy. The CDs look better, quite frankly, because I haven't seen the other one. But we need to do something from a compromise standpoint. We're taking way too much time on this topic as a whole. Plenty of other things that we need to discuss, that we need to be getting into, but first off, we have to have a policy set. We have to have something. I know TJ's frustrated. I guess personally, I would say give us a little bit of time. We can't make any specific decisions tonight because it has to be policy driven from a board standpoint. I don't know what that time frame is, unfortunately, and that's the crap part of it, at least from my standpoint. I don't know how the rest of them feel regarding this. This is just my personal opinion. But I think we need to have individual. I think those need to go through our marketing team, our branding, so that we have something specified, and that's what's used on uniforms. That's what's used on apparel. That's what's used on everything. Instead of having the boosters buying stuff and designing stuff, it all has to be through. But we need individualism as well, because you're going to get real tired of having that logo, as cool as it is, on every piece of product thing that we have. And the kids need that individualism. They need to have that buy into their own specific sport. That identity. That's exactly, and not just sports.
I mean, I was gonna say all
Everything. Every
the
activity.
activities.
It needs to be, because the wings, like we were talking about the wings on track and field, those types of things. It's just a matter of getting that to that place. And we obviously didn't do that when we rebranded. And we were talking about that earlier. That was a process that had a whole bunch of changes and obstacles, and we didn't get to that point, and we need to get to that point, and this is going to force us to do that.
I think we, and to interrupt on that, I think we thought that the brand guidelines, that was it. This is how you use the logo. We did not anticipate needing to have a policy for how it was implemented on everything else. Like, because my marketing background, that's the brand guidelines, that's the policy, that's how you use it. Like, to Anna's point, that's the way I've looked at things as well. But I do think that there needs to be much more specific, like when a donation comes in, we need to go through this process and we talk to this person and we look at the design first. And, we can accept the donation and we'll accept the donation in that, yes, go ahead and look, but before it's commissioned or completed, it needs to be approved in what it looks like. That level of understanding of policy, I think, is important for the normal average person who's not used to working with logos and design. Because I think that that's more standard. Because I'm just used to talking about logos and branding and why that's important, and that's not everyone's job and everyone's perspective. I think having that or not having that, it was an oversight on our part, and it definitely needs to be corrected.
I agree 100%. The issue is that's all forward thinking review. Now we got to deal with this. What are we dealing? What are we going to do with what we have? And what we have is a former alumni who made a very generous donation, not knowing and not really, quite frankly, having any real reason to know what happened or what those guidelines were, and how do we come to some form of compromise. And I don't know if that happens tonight, quite frankly. A specific guy, we got the, I guess I don't know.
Is there a way that the sign can go up, until, when a compromise is made, we can always add the approved logos or do whatever's decided, even though the sign's up. We're in the middle of the baseball season.
Do we have the back for it already?
No.
When does that come in?
Should be a week or so. Back and the logo for the front.
I'm okay with that suggestion that it goes up at least temporarily, as long as everybody understands that it might change later, and that's the tricky part. Once it's up, people see it, how attached do they become to it? I'd have no problem adding it on a temporary basis until we can get this resolved. There again, that's just my opinion. I would also like to point out that whether it was an official policy or not, there was a procedure that we did go through. We just had some unfortunate departures by some key people that created at least some of this miscommunication.
Anyone else have any thoughts? Just suggestion.
I would be okay with it going up. I mean, the windscreens are already up. I'm in the signage, I'm okay with it going up, again, with the understanding that it very likely could be changed, and the current baseball paw artwork could be changed. Go through that process for sport-specific logos, and it might not look like that, and it would be changed then.
So are you still talking about covering up that artwork?
That's my
altogether?
question too, because I mean, if we receive we probably wouldn't put it up until we have a backing for it. Otherwise, we're putting it up twice.
Right,
I would leave it.
down to the back it comes in.
But then are we leaving the front the way it is, or are we putting the logo that comes in at the same time on top of it?
I would leave it as.
Well, I think like, is TJ, are you still on?
Yeah.
Okay, your comments on the approved logo, which one?
I mean, I'm like I said, I'm willing for them to add anything. I would like to keep that four-finger logo, but if you guys want to add any logos on the front of that sign, I am fine with that as long as you keep the glove.
And TJ, do you recognize, I don't think anybody's suggesting that the baseball glove paw version of the paw will disappear. I don't think anybody knows that at this point. But if we go through this process and identify the logos for each individual sport, it may change. Is that clear through our discussion so far?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that sounds clear. I would like to be kind of in on that if I could. I mean, just at least a courtesy of, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. Does this look good to you? I mean, I think that would be okay with me.
If we can't reach a point where TJ is satisfied, as a board, do we give him his money back? I'd feel guilty if he wasn't happy with the outcome, because I think he should have been, the outcomes should have been approved a long time ago.
Right.
And if that was done, he would be happy with it up. And so if it reaches a point where he is not happy with it, I would feel guilty taking his money. I don't have an issue with that. I agree with that.
I would agree with that as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
So once the backing comes in, you put it back up as is.
Add the piece, no?
That's the question.
I think TJ said he was okay if we added,
It's okay to add.
Keep the.
But he's wanting to
current
add on the
logo.
sides, but not change
Yeah.
this. Correct.
correct.
the current logo
We
front
put it
and
up
center.
as it is, add our piece. We go through our
Temporary basis.
temporary basis, go through figuring out where this is going in the future, and if it meets criteria, it stays up. If it doesn't meet criteria, we make it to meet criteria. If TJ's not happy, then that's the next conversation. A lot of stuff there.
Perfect.
But in the meantime, we have the responsibility to start putting policy together. We have the responsibility to get Laura involved to start determining with coaches what those look like with final approval with Jared and those types of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll put the marketing committee back together.
Probably a good time. It's been how many years since we did it?
A while.
Yeah, I would anticipate that we'd have some amount of, probably not to the same level or extent as the marketing committee and how broad, I mean, because there was 35 to 40 people. I remember that work session at Tycoga. I think we invited over 100. So it wasn't just those that were invited. It was a lot of people that were invited to talk about these larger
branding initiatives.
That was,
But,
sorry, to
okay.
interrupt you, that was more than the SIAC group, that was.
Oh, yeah.
That was
And we-
boosters, coaches.
We talked about this with building teams and coaches. I mean, this wasn't a secret to anyone.
We called and like on the phone invited, not just email, like longtime community members who maybe weren't on email, but they have a lot of history with our community, like, hey, please come participate. So we were very diligent in reaching out to diverse groups to make sure that there was at least one person there that could speak to that.
And I know I'm not supposed to comment now, but I want to say thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Because I looked everywhere for the video that was presented, and it's a 70-second video that really doesn't go into any detail about the history of how the brand got brought up.
Okay.
And actually, the video that's out there, if you look it up, it's a knockoff of Spencer Iowa's video. I mean, it's basically a knockoff from another branding agency. When I look
For what?
our new brand video, look up Spencer Iowa's branding video. It's whoever put that together, it's very much a knockoff of another
We
The
know.
store.
one that
We
the
knew.
state put together.
And
No, we knew that at the time.
Oh, we knew that?
okay, it looks very much like their tiger too, but I thought our tiger looks better, our person looks better. But I mean, I really feel like we do go through another branding, or not branding, but marketing piece. I would love to know history behind why we pick what we pick.
Yeah,
Because that's,
I mean, it's really interesting, and call me for coffee and I'll go through it. And you'll love the secret little thing that we added that we're like, wow, how did we all miss that? Which is why you ask for diverse feedback.
but that's
So,
why people love it and we support it.
The sign
so I do think
put
that,
up in the new location.
In the mock that Mr. Burt sent us with the backing and the logo, it was that logo. And to my understanding from the email, the intentions of that was to cover up the baseball artwork. So I just want to be sure before you guys order that.
that's our,
Spend that money.
It's already ordered.
Decision is made before you order that and say that.
so that's already been ordered, and that's what we were just talking about, is putting the backing up, but not putting that on it yet, putting it up as is, with the understanding that after we go through the sport specific branding, that central center, not central DeWitt, but center baseball artwork, that may change after that sport specific process happens. But then my thought would also be that when we do those logo creations, that it's not gonna just be, 5 people in a room. It won't be 100 people invited to talk about baseball. No,
No one would want that.
no one wants that. But we'll make sure that we pull in those groups that are representative of who cares about baseball, who cares about football and band, and that those people will be able to have feedback in their specific logo. So it won't be created in a vacuum and then just told that this is what you've got.
Okay, and in that decision process, just, this blank area here was left for my big mistake.
Okay.
Not it.
I kind of assumed that
I
because
like
I
it.
noticed the appearances.
So we have a plan on that. Any other questions from you? DJ, do you have any other follow-up? Any questions?
Nope, sounds good to me.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Where is he? He's a Phoenix. Awesome.
I'll talk with our maintenance team tomorrow.
Are we done?
You can stick around and listen to the rest of it if you like. It's kind of,
We should probably stay in order.
Thank you for your time.
it's kind of insulting to leave you no meeting.
I'll pay for you, don't worry.
I'm just kidding. All right, moving on. 8th grade health textbook purchase.
Yeah, so this again is just a discussion item tonight, as part of the conversation that started that earlier this winter, looking at revamping our curriculum. After looking at things this spring, and we really feel strongly that we need a resource to tie the instruction to keep things, scientifically based, was mentioned, like that's something that we need to have some structure. And so here's one option of something that we could use. It's a teen health textbook, and levels that it's geared for is 6 through 8. I have linked an overview brochure in there. It's linked to the standards. It's much more, how to say it, not as graphic as the one that we have. Much more of a diagram type, medical science based. So just, yes, not the pictures that we're in the one that we no longer have. I did pull out and work with the rep as well. These are the ones that are specifically geared towards human growth and development. The nice thing about this textbook is that it does have a wide variety of topics like alcohol abuse, drug abuse, healthy eating, like nutrition, things like that. So there's other topics that can be included. These are the specific modules to human growth and development. You can see it includes the reproductive system, which is part of the human sexuality component that we're required to teach. And then relationships, pregnancy, childhood, the STDs, HIV and AIDS, and then HPV is not listed there, but that's also one that's in the code. They're required. So that this is one option. Thanks for the overview brochures there, the alignment to the standards. Iowa follows the national standards, and that's what's linked here. So that gives you just an idea. McGraw-Hill is the publisher. Other districts in Iowa that use the same resource at this point, they'll be able to get that list as well. Sorry, that's down there at the bottom. And I've talked to districts around our area as well. Like Pleasant Valley, they do not have a text that they necessarily use. There's more of a PowerPoint base created by the teachers. I did not hear back from Macokota, and North Scott again has a PowerPoint base as well, and a few other resources. But so this is what I have at this point, just to mull over. I can get any other information you guys would like from the rep to see. I'm just going to go to that overview brochure. See if there's more information here. We go click on that. Yeah.
Maybe.
So it kind of shows, there's the modules. You can see emotional health, conflict resolution. There's the nutrition that I was mentioning. There's other things incorporated, but it also does have the human growth and development component. It talks about kind of there's an online text access to the textbook as well, because we do order 25 hard copies, because that way we don't spend as much on textbook, but students and parents would then have access to the online version of the text that would be posted as well through campus. I think what else would be helpful to know.
So the online textbook would be posted on Canvas, where you'd have to have a username to log in.
Yeah.
But the state curriculum could be posted to our website where anyone would have access to that.
And like the information of the text saying, this is the textbook we use. But so when basically, if we were to purchase this one, we would buy 25 hard copies that would stay in the classroom, and then we buy licenses per kid for access to that online. So then it is going home with them without having to purchase 130 textbook hard copies of that.
Which is common for other courses.
That's how we do, yeah. Yep. And then there's a website for more information as well. Like I said, if you guys have questions specifically, like if you want to see specific modules, I can see if they'll send us a hard copy of just a certain, or, you know, I see if they won't send us like a set of textbooks, but they would probably send us samples if we would like to look through those as well. I have one, but we could try to get more.
You have one right
I
now?
have one, yep, I have one right now. I don't know, Glencoe is what I recognize as a.
You read it,
Glencoe was the,
I'm good.
but, and I, like I said, I can get more, we can have those available as well, or get access to it online. See if she'll give me some codes to look up online as well and share those out. I just kind of wanted you guys to see where we are at this point with it, because you'll see later in the board agenda, we have curricular purchases. And so this is one that's separate from that. But just wanted you to know where we were at.
And then, you know, as I don't know if you want to talk about the timelines and shrinking
Yeah.
the amount of time.
Through this reevaluation of content too, was just going back to it. At some point, has gotten to be a longer unit than what it needs to be. So we're looking at a 5 to maybe 7 or 8 days at the most. Which on a day 1, day 2, you're looking at a 2-week time frame that we taught every other day.
And then incorporating as well, bringing in some co-teachers. So for example, having candidates come in during the STI, talking about sexual transmitted and infections and, the medical background that she has would be helpful there. For some of the things, Carl Small from the counseling perspective, on Sundays coming in and co-teaching as well. Yeah, like you said, a 5 to 7 day unit that would hit the standards that are required by the state. Parents would know then when that would be. It would be the last 2-ish weeks of the semester, so that if they choose to opt out, it's not like you're with the class for 7 weeks, out for 2, and then come back. It would be just the last 2 weeks you'd be opted out if you're first during that instruction. And then again, just being that transparency of the opting out, at the beginning of when they're going through the curriculum,
Syllabus,
the orientation, like when you're going into 8th grade, when you're already talking
orientation.
like saying in 8th grade, you have human growth and development, you have the option to opt out of that, and then another reminder coming up as that's getting closer, saying, hey, remember, this is the year, it's going to be coming up in a month or so. Let us know if you're wanting to opt in or out, or if you want to opt out, let us know if they want out.
And doing that electronically, so everyone receives it.
Electronically, so that we know for sure that it went out and sent you the correct email addresses and things like that.
We think moving to 5 to 7 days at the end would be good.
That's more than enough time to cover what's required.
And it might be 5 or 6 days.
And being able to say, day 1, this is what we're talking about. Day 2, this is what we're talking about. After topics, and these are the, this is module 10, whatever it is. We'll be covering that on these days. Whatever it might be, their clear outline, and that would be available to parents at any time. And then, like I said, with the textbook itself, we would have to have a license. If there's a license that's with the kid, that they would be able to access at any time as well.
So a parent would be able to access that as well.
Is it, so in my high school students, I can get in Canvas and take a look at what's going on. Is that true for 8th graders as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is currently available to see what's coming up and what's in.
And we've just actually this year too, as a result of our last SIAC roundtable talking, so there was a parent that had emailed ahead of time, so couldn't make it. We talked about how Canvas looks so very different from class to class. So we have been in the last month or so working on, okay, teachers, this is what you need to have on your Canvas page. When the first click that someone sees, they're going to see the course information, the syllabus is right here on this screen, and then unit 1 is the next module, unit 2. So that, because right now it's, every teacher does it a little bit different. So as a parent or even a student, you don't know. And it came to light, especially this year, because the Zoom links in some teachers' Canvas were here, and in another teacher's Canvas page, they were here. And so you would have a hard time finding that.
Yeah, when I ran into that, I just asked my kids.
Yeah, but if students can't get it figured out, then it's difficult for the parents. We'd like to see user-friendly curriculum. We're doing some more training now.
So that's where all of that would be in help. And then the things that we could post publicly we could put online, like just saying, the unit plan that we have rights to, we can't post a public or a textbook on.
The outline and what topics will be included.
Dates, things like that.
Yep.
Jen, does this textbook that you're passing around include the supplement?
No, that would just be that.
It would just be that, because it says the healthy relationships and sexual values available.
There are some of them as supplements that you can buy more. I'm not picking up. Sorry, I was clicking around in mine thinking that you were seeing it.
Where am I
The
going?
module tech, like the module matches, that should match. There's additional things you can buy that are like little stapled supplements, what you call them, but I was not looking at that at this time.
So I really like this option. I know that you put a lot of time into finding this and addressing this issue. I think that we have had an incredible amount of advocacy on this topic from a large number of our parents, and I think that's amazing. This is it's a topic that should have been brought forward, and I'm glad that it was. And I think we're moving forward with finding the better
best, well, best is better option. And we're making appropriate changes. And my kids have gone through this class. One of them had the full class. One of them was in the COVID time, so he did not get that part. And every kid is different. My child did not have an issue with the class at all. And I was very specific in my conversation with her. And I share that because that was my experience. And every kid is different and they do mature at different rates. So I think that this is, I like the illustration as opposed to the photography. I like the adjustment of the time. I think it's incredibly important to be very transparent during 8th grade orientation, that this is going to be talked about and that we remind parents like this is coming up and remind them multiple times, because I get a lot of emails and I might miss that one email. Please don't send it home with my child because it will not get there. Or if it does, I'll find it when they clean out their locker. So I just, it's.
Well, being consistent in how that's done too, whether it's 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade or freshman, I mean, making sure that communication is consistent. And we learn our biggest lessons from when mistakes are made. And this is a massive lesson from my perspective. I'm speaking from me, not the whole board. But I do feel that we responded quickly when it was brought forward. And there's been a ton of conversation about it, and we do not take it lightly at all. This is a big topic. So we're not approving this textbook, but we have one copy, and the resources are there for you guys to vet that as much as you'd like. It is not typical for the school board to approve book by book what our teacher groups bring forward. Like, so for example, a math book would be selected by all the math teachers who would use that book. And if they come to us and say, we want this book, I'm not going to tell them, really, you sure you don't want this one instead? Because they're the math teacher. So that due diligence is there, and we trust in that. And in this case, there was a very big mistake. And we're addressing that for sure. And I think this is a good option for us to consider for next year. It's a great publisher, it's age appropriate. And again, I want to thank all of the parents who feel strongly about advocating for their child, because it's not easy to stand up and say something. So thank you.
I will say, not as politically correct as she did, I will advocate for my kids as well. That class my kids have been through the last 2 years, I brought out some of the best conversations that we've had in our home about stuff that most parents want to stick their head in the sand. It's very convenient to come in here and throw allegations around and say things and get stuff from one person that's hearsay to another person and so forth. But quite frankly, kids are having sex these days. Kids are doing a lot of things that we don't want to think about. That conversations that we have with my kids were some of the best conversations. They feel more open to talk about sex, quite frankly, to talk about drugs and alcohol too. It gives them an outlet. It showed them a way to speak to their parents because of this class, because of this teacher in this class. Not the book. Maybe the book was inappropriate. I can agree with that. And that's fine, and we're changing that. But let's not put our heads in the sand and be all defiant about how our kids aren't doing this. Our kids are perfect angels, and if we don't talk about it, they won't do it. Let's be realistic here. If we have a teacher, we have someone. No, you've already spoken. You can have a seat.
I'll just stand up.
We have a teacher that is getting those kids out of their shell to talk about it and feel comfortable talking about it at home. If they don't feel comfortable coming home to talk about it, then there needs to be some different conversations at home as well. Maybe we need to look at ourselves in the mirror, not just our kids and not just our teachers, and say, why aren't our kids comfortable having those conversations with us at home? So I will stick up for this class, not the book. I understand the book, but I will stick up for this class and this teacher 100%, because I think it's ridiculous.
I didn't speak, so can I speak?
No, you
now?
cannot. I'm sorry. It's,
You let
I
her have
apologize.
follow up. Yeah, you let her follow up, and then you told me to sit down. Here's what I'm gonna say. My daughter.
Brandon,
My daughter's
you are
my
done.
daughter. My daughter's
Tyler.
my daughter, so my only point. My daughter's my daughter.
You have to leave.
Okay. I worked in the BU in the school system here several years ago. And I experienced from 6th, 7th, 8th graders, their behavior. I got in, was privileged, maybe you want to say, to a lot of the conversation amongst, I'm Cindy Justin, amongst the kids. And it was a real eye-opener, for sure.
We should move on.
Yes.
There are kids.
We have a
We should
public
move on.
forum to
You
talk.
don't have any idea what kind of.
I do,
behavior-
ma'am. Either stay quiet or you can leave. We have a public forum. If you weren't here for it and chose not to talk, that is fine. I have the discretion as the president. We're moving on. Anyone else on the board have anything to say?
The plan with this review would that we'd bring it back next month for approval.
Yep.
Not typical with what we do with text, but just wanted you to have the opportunity to see it before we did it.
I'm sorry? You can ask a question, but we're not privy to answer questions. If it's not.
I'm Dr. Michael Phelps here. If you want to really further parent involvement, then I think what we should do is do an opt-in instead of an opt-out. So that way parents can listen and they say, why am I doing this? What should I be concerned about? Instead of saying, well, if they happen to get the email, then they can opt out. They're automatically enrolled. I see the kids in my clinic who suffer after they see stuff. I see the psychological problem. And I see how they deal with it. And how much it affects them. I think it's kind of we're ignoring the people that are suffering for the sake of the ones that it's okay for.
Thank you. Sorry if I was rude to you. I apologize. Any other comments from the board? All right. Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Come on up.
Well, I'm going to pass these on if you all want to take it. My name is Lauren Schwant, and I'm with the Command DeWitt Coalition. And we yell at Mr. Pickup because he said I was going to be first on the agenda. So, but I did learn a lot, especially with the branding, because I'm Comanche. So if anybody knows Comanche, we're dropping the Indians and getting our whole new mascot. So it was a little eye-opening experience for me. But I guess
You're gonna have a policy, aren't you?
Yes, I'm gonna go back and say policy. I learned that today. And I know I'm only supposed to have 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna like really talk. Yeah, now I'm down to 4. But I feel like this is a good time for me to talk since we are talking about curriculums in the school. And first off, I just want to say thank you to Central DeWitt for having the great relationship with the Comanche DeWitt Coalition. They're always willing to work with us with everything that we do. And if you don't know, our coalition, we are youth substance abuse prevention. So in that health module, they were talking about alcohol, drugs, tobacco. And that is what we really focus on, is keeping our youth off of drugs and alcohol. So one thing that we brought to Dr. Peterson, Mr. Pickup, and Mrs. Seltzer is this BOTVIN life skills training. It's a 12-week program. It's evidence-based. So again, it is based on, there's actually elementary, there's middle school, and there's high school level. So it is age appropriate, as I'm learning. But on this sheet, if anybody else wants one, the BOTVIL's life skills training is a research validated substance abuse prevention program proven to reduce the risk of alcohol, tobacco, drug abuse, and violence by targeting the major social and psychological factors that promote the initiation of substance use and other risky behaviors.
So this comprehensive and exciting program provides adolescents and young teens with the confidence and skills necessary to successfully handle challenging situations. So I've also, in the packet, we have like this little pamphlet that we put together, and this was from 2019, so already almost 2 years ago. We do a drug-free communities survey where we survey 6th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade students on their attitudes, their use of drugs and substances. So if you look through there, you can see why both Comanche and DeWitt. So this is Comanche and DeWitt together since we are the Comanche DeWitt Coalition. And some things that I wanted to point out as to why we feel that this program is important. So again, back in 2019, it is against my values to use alcohol and drugs. So out of 6th grade students, 76% agree with that. So there's 24% of 6th graders that say it's against their values, or that it's not against their values to use drugs and alcohol. It's huge, 24%. And that drops as they get older. So 11th grade students, it dropped down to 68%. And then this year we did do the drug-free communities survey again. We didn't update this yet, but we did add 2 questions on there, really dealing with mental health issues, because we know that's a huge issue that is so intertwined with drug and substance abuse, especially with COVID. Yep. Especially with COVID going on. So one question that was asked was, during the past 12 months, did you ever feel so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that you stopped doing some usual activities? And this is absolutely alarming, because 24% of 6th graders answered yes to that question. 27% of 8th graders answered yes to that question. And 37% of 11th graders answered yes to that question, that they were so depressed. So that is huge. And to follow up with that question, we then asked, have you ever used drugs or alcohol to help deal with stress, anxiety, and depression? 4% of 6th graders answered yes. 2% of 8th graders answered yes. And 24% of 11th graders answered yes. So that is absolutely huge. And if you look in here, 2 of my favorite statistics, more than 90% of people who have substance abuse issues started to drink alcohol or use drugs before they were 18. So that is why we believe prevention is so important. If we can prevent students, our youth, from ever starting and going down this path, that is amazing for everybody, right? And you had said it, some of these were open conversations to you. Comanche started implementing this last year, this past 2020 school year. And we've heard from parents, it was really great conversations that their students were bringing home, 5th graders, 6th graders, before they're really starting to initiate alcohol and drug use. And another alarming statistic with drugs and alcohol is the age of onset. And I know we don't want to stick our heads in the sand, right? We know our kids are experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And unfortunately, it's starting younger and younger. And the age of onset for alcohol is 11.7 years old. 11.7 in our communities. So that is alarming. And that's why we feel that this program is so important to implement in our school. And that's all I got. Does anybody have questions for me?
And Lauren is going to come in and do some of the active teaching.
Yes.
We're going to have 2 guidance counselors trained. I really think in being a middle school principal for now 6 years, this is needed. It's also discussions that happen in a lot of households too, which I appreciate. But DARE is really non-existent at this time. You usually talk to a 6th grader who just completed DARE years past, all of your kids probably did, mine did. They were bound and determined to never, ever do some of this stuff. So I think moving it into the middle school time period makes sense. And Mr. Small and yourself, and I think either Mr. Onimus or Officer Witt or Officer Onimus being involved in that as well. We don't know how it's going to look, but it's definitely something that, because we have quest time, that we can use some of that. And I think in 7th and 8th, myself and Mr. Petchy probably would agree.
And they build off of wanting to each other too. So if you want them to start younger, you can start in elementary, and they basically just keep building year after year. So 7th, 8th, you could go up to 9th, all the way up to 12th. So, and we are federally grant funded right now. So we actually said we would use some of our funding to put the counselors through the training, for the next few years, however you guys want to do it, get the participant manuals and all that, so it's really no cost. to you guys.
That's also a good thing.
Yeah, so no cost, right?
No
So,
cost.
yeah.
Good. We appreciate all you do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So be a part of the coalition, everybody. Thank you.
A lot of students are. Yeah.
So I apologize, I'm gonna have to leave. I do not budget my time correctly. I thought your meeting would be over. I have another meeting I have to attend. But my legislative update really is only that, because I don't know how to say no, I am now on the Legislative Resolutions Committee, the LRC, for the Iowa School Board Association. There is. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to resolve them, but I'm gonna impact the ones that IASB advocates strongly for. So those are really long Zoom calls as well as a couple trips to Des Moines. So it's a really great group of school board members who are strong advocates for making sure that state rules and regulations impact our kids correctly and that we have as much local control as possible. So I'm going to be spending a little bit more time with that committee.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I'm
Anything?
sorry. I gotta go.
No. Superintendent purchase? No. All right, Cindy, financial reports.
All right, if you have the cash balances report, our general fund, activity fund, management fund, and then the CPAC fund are pretty similar to what they were last year. Now, note in regards to the activity fund, that's not just all sports, where the sports are having a decline in their revenue. Some of the sponsorship programs are having a better year with not having as many expenditures, but still doing their fundraisers. So that whole activity fund encompasses just, not just sports, but our sponsorship and our clubs as well. You may see some changes next month with transfers from the general fund to say our couple account. It'll be a request to move cash for like non-education software. We do it every year from general fund to couple. I'm starting to work those up. We're also going to do a change for the risk pool that we put out, the risk pool for our utilities, natural gas. We paid $105,000 for that risk pool insurance. And I talked with her just last week and we're going to get a refund, even though February was a really cold month, we still will get a refund on our premium.
Oh, wow.
So that was a good.
You know how much that'll be?
She didn't have an answer for me yet. Our increase for next year was 5%. So I don't really know how to gauge that. But, our save and loss and our capital accounts aren't spending as much as fast as we did last year, but know that we haven't purchased our buses yet or our Suburbans. And we have a furniture purchase out on the horizon for the classrooms that Jen finished up the final preparations for the furniture. So you'll see larger expenditures coming out of those in the near future. To add to that, we also got a buyback on our computers of $87,000. So that was back in the couple. So that's an additional funding that we did, which is good. Our property tax receipts are up from the projections as well, which is always a good thing. And I want to note here that we may need to look at the general fund ESSER to the activities fund, depending on how they come out at the end of the year because of their revenues being so reduced. ESSER allows you to move funds from your general fund to them. The one way, if we do it just directly from our general fund, it hits our spending authority. If we do it for ESSER, it doesn't. And so it's just going to be a matter of how much it is and what we need to do. We've got to kind of wait till the year shakes out to see where that lands.
And we have legislative approval just for this time period. That's not moving forward.
And that will, if we do it with our ESSER funds, that will require a board resolution to be passed. So we may have a shorter phone call or that needs to happen before it gets seen. Our interest revenue is down, and that's kind of because of our contract that we changed. We now carry $500,000 in our activities for our general fund anymore. They move everything to the sweep account, and it affects our revenue for our interest. And nutrition continues to do well with the additional funding for the lunch program, and their cash balance, if you notice, has continued to increase, which is good for them because there's some pretty large equipment items that they're going to have to. They're a standalone program, and they're required to purchase all their own equipment as well. And so they've got some pretty high dollar stuff that we've repaired enough times that we really need to look at. Is it feasible to keep repairing these, or is it time? And then that's pretty much all I have for the
All right, student fees.
No changes. No.
Really?
No. The one that we normally have to change is nutrition, but because of all the additional funding we've been getting, we don't even have to do the calculation.
That's good to hear. We have a motion to approve no changes to our student fees.
So moved.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, personnel reports. Is there anything in here that you want to pull out?
There's a lot.
There's a lot of personnel reports. We have a lot of
A lot of
openings and a
movement.
lot of changes and a lot of. Need a motion to approve all this?
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, donations to the district. Page up all over again.
So typical benevity, as you know, we have other months. We do have over $6,000 coming to our from our boosters for cross-country uniforms. And what I mentioned in our earlier conversation is we have a Todd Cox Memorial Bench, and the picture is attached there within board docs donated by Chuck. And George and I met with him just a couple days ago here and talked about the location just south of the new restrooms, and that there's a little cove area, which would be great for this bench. It's pretty excited about.
What's the black box?
His picture.
It will be.
Okay.
That's great.
The uniforms are cash or uniforms?
We order them. Yeah.
We order them, we take what they make.
I'll move to approve the donation.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Circular resource purchases for 2021, 2022.
Yes, this is just additional curricular resources such as there's math textbooks on their campus. We have to pay to have that. We have to pay to have that available, so that the license is on their Read Naturally intervention system that we use in the area of reading. Turn it in is something that 712 Language Arts uses. It's a plagiarism, helps them identify kids are plagiarizing, and it also helps our kids. There's a coach in there that can help them with citations and suggestions, things like that. So it's with grammar. Moby Max is an online resource for intermediate that it helps to close learning gaps, intervention, additional practice for students. Snapper and co-writers assistive technology like the speech to text or text to speech for students who need that, the assistive tech resource there. Mathia is the online math. They use that in 7th and 8th grade math as in extra practice for that. ST math, if you guys have younger kids, if you've heard them talk about GG, that's ST math. It's the visual spatial, helping them understand math in a different way. STEM scopes is the hands-on materials we need for science labs in K-8. The AP Euro textbooks I have on there with the new turnover, we just had a resignation that was the teacher teaching this, so that one we'll have to revisit and make sure that that's still what we need. Okay, and then additional textbooks in line 13. I don't know if there's any numbers like that, but that is just every once in a while we'll have like a section that's too big. Like last year it was statistics. We had ordered 10 more textbooks because the sections are getting larger. So if there's any extra copies of something that we need. Foundations is the literacy in K3. It's the phonemic awareness instruction for them. And then frontline, that's professional development evaluation for employees. That's again to see your license. And then the FAST assessments. That you see down there. And it's the last of magazines. For more non-fiction support there. But the FAST assessments, when they talk about the FAST universal screeners, they bring those scores. We're just paying for those assessments.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tentative agreement with nutrition services. No, sorry, this one. Tentative agreement with Central DeWitt Education Association.
Yep. So we had some changes in Schedule B. Really mostly cleanup. As you look through there, Cindy, you want to talk about the increase in the So we gave them step movement on the salary schedule, no addition to the base. With the increase in insurance being what it was, that took them to 1.57, I believe, because that's the number we used for the administrative salaries down below, the 1.57 wage increase and 3.12, 3.15 total package increase. So that's what we ended up on that. We're going to have kind of a labor management committee moving forward, just to talk about some different things that we discussed in our process, maybe whether it's different forms of salary schedules and those kinds of things, just having some additional conversation and determining, does our salary schedule really do what we want it to do? So
that's teachers specifically.
That would be teachers, probably like our district leadership team, 2 teachers from each building, and our administrative team just getting together to talk about if we want to make any changes or recommendations.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nutrition.
Yeah, so nutrition, they're changing their handbook, which their handbook's, I think the next item, 37 cents. I did that in the meeting too. It said 37%. They were all about it. But 37 cents across the board for nutrition.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, handbook for the drivers, secretaries, associates, nutrition, custodian, school health, nurse assistants.
You bet. So we went through each of those conversations with our employee groups, updated their handbooks, new wages. And those were really the big changes within each of those groups. So the board approved their handbooks for the following year, each spring, summer, as we move forward. So I'd like to move that tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 2021, 2022 contract for administrators, supervisors, remaining supports personnel not covered by collective bargaining.
So what we met at 3:15 to talk about this in exempt session. Do you want to talk about it or do you want me to?
No, go ahead, sorry.
But we talked about using the same percentage that we reached with the teachers, 1.7% wage increase or 3.15% total package increase, whichever is greater, because some employees with in this group, just with the insurance increase being what it is, pretty much eats up any wage or salary increase that they would receive. So at least they'll receive a 1.57% wage increase as part of that. Since becoming a superintendent, I've been in the first year of a 3-year contract each year, and I requested to the board that they continue that, as well as putting the remainder of our administrators on a 2-year contract as well.
I'll move that the salaries be increased by the greater of 1.57% of salary or 3.15% of the total package. And I guess we do in the same motion that the superintendent be extended a 3-year contract and the remaining principals a 2-year contract.
Excellent. Any other discussion on any of that? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda. Is there anything in the consent that we want to pull out specifically? If not, we just need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pre-agenda meeting is with myself and Ms. Ryan Williams on July 14th. And then it looks like regular board meeting on the 21st, 6 o'clock. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming. I assume I have something.